So I wanted to tackle the dreaded D word, diversity, because I think diversity in film has spiraled a bit and lost sight of what I think is the important, very basic human factors that go into the need for diversity in film. So, back when I was a film student, I never called myself a female filmmaker. I, in fact, didn't really identify with the films that were being made by a lot of the female filmmakers at the time. Not that they weren't great, I just didn't watch them and go, "Oh wow, I feel seen." I didn't feel connected to them in the same way that a lot of my other female filmmaker friends were. And I was part of that generation that, certainly thought we were beyond all of this. and um so again, I just didn't really see the need to say I'm a female filmmaker. I was just like, I'm a filmmaker. That's it. And then when I started working on my feature film, and especially having some years in place and seeing how things had come out with the Me Too movement, and also just looking at the statistics, the statistics of the films that were coming out, I started thinking about things differently and realizing that it is necessary still, because there is not equality, to make a big deal out of the fact that I am a female filmmaker. And when those imbalances level out consistently, we can talk about dropping these kinds of monikers. And I think that part of that is talking about a basic employment aspect is, do we have equal opportunity to the jobs? And again, the statistics say that we don't, that women or people of color don't have the same job opportunities. And then there's the other side of it, which is the stories that are being told and being financed are not stories that focus on women and or people of color. And again, the statistics are, in 2024 we had over 54%, I think largely because of Barbie, where we had, female led films. But then in 2025, it dropped down to 33%. So again, there's a lot of inconsistency, and most of the time it is well below 50%. And the statistics for leads of color are even worse. So I wanted to talk about why representation matters on just a basic human level. Humans are inherently tribal. We are also pattern seeking creatures. We're constantly looking for the patterns in things. That Sesame Street game of one of these things is not like the other ones. We are constantly seeking out these patterns. And when you, as an individual, are the thing that is not like the other ones, that can affect your sense of belonging. It can affect a sense of identity. And we've seen this in stories of people who are adopted, who don't feel like, or who want to understand, where they come from, because they don't feel connected to their family, or they question it. Doesn't mean that the connection's not there, or that they don't feel loved, but it's a question. Identity is one of the basic kind of psychological markers of what it means to be a human being. We've seen it with biracial kids or kids with immigrant parents. There's a sense of kind of like, where do I belong, right? And this is a very human thing. And so and even among, when you do look like everybody else, if there's something different about you where you like different kinds of people, or you think different kinds of ways, or you believe in different things, it starts to make you separate from that group. And again, these are just human tendencies that exist for millennia. Now, you pair that with film or video, which is the most powerful medium in the world. And it's powerful because when we are watching other people, we have what's called mirror neurons that are firing. And so when we're watching somebody dance or sing or laugh or do things, our brain is actually firing the same pathway as if we were doing those activities. And so there's this kind of biological connection to what we are watching. And in that viewership, we are also looking for ways to identify with the main characters. Our job as filmmakers is to get our audience to feel for our characters, to want them to succeed in their goals, to laugh when they laugh, to cry when they cry, to fall in love when they are falling in love. That is the basic principle of what we do when we create a film. And to a certain extent, it's one of the reasons why people like going to films. We want to go to the movies to laugh and cry along with these characters that we are watching. And so that sense of identification is required. We have to understand and believe and support what our main character is going through. And what we're really talking about is empathy. We are empathizing with the main character and their journey and feeling for them. So if the majority of media that you are consuming is stories about people who are of a certain gender, a certain race, a certain religion, a certain language, a certain body shape, with potentially, a certain color hair or eye color or the way they dress or all of these things in some kind of various combination. If you don't look like that person, if you don't identify with that person naturally, you, as an audience member, have one of two choices. You can either feel separated from it, like, this doesn't belong to me, I don't belong to it, I don't feel represented, this doesn't speak to me. Or you learn to identify with and empathize with somebody who doesn't look like you or speak like you or do the things that you would normally do. You learn to empathize. And so that's really why representation matters, is because the majority of content that we've had over the 100 years of filmmaking has been stories that only represent a certain sector of society. And everybody else has had to learn to empathize with that, except for that group of people. And that is a huge cultural shift. It really shapes the culture that we live in, which also makes it then harder for this group of people to then empathize with people that don't look like them, because they haven't been trained. They haven't had those experiences that we've all been seeped in. And if the industry and the business behind it doesn't fund a diversity of stories and representation of the world that we see out every day, then they don't have to choose to empathize with anybody else. There will always be an offering that they identify with and that they belong to. So, for example, my husband can readily say, "Oh, this is a chick flick," and not watch it, and not, kind of dismiss it, and not really spend the time connecting with these characters and empathizing with their journey. But if he's watching Larry David, I can enjoy it. It is not necessarily my thing, but I can enjoy it. Like, these are things that it's not a big deal for me to sit and watch it. But he has a harder time sometimes watching some of these things. So this is just just a very basic human reality, where when you are exposed to things in a certain way over and over and over again, that becomes your norm. And that becomes what you're used to. And that can lead to certain judgments or assumptions or understandings, because you just don't have any other perspective. And so I encourage everybody to watch things that represent stories of characters and places, and with a diversity represented on screen. And I also encourage the industry to fund those, because what they are doing is training people to be empathetic with each other. I think television overall statistically has some better numbers, and people are engaging with more television these days. And I do think that you see some of these cultural shifts where people are used to seeing and empathizing with characters that don't look like them, talk like them, and all that. But this is at the heart of why representation matters, is because of the access and the empathy training that it creates. And then on top of that, we have this kind of employment question of telling authentic stories and more representation behind the camera. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go together, because as a creative, if I am directing a man in a male character, since I am not a man, I still have to find a way to direct that performance and understand those characters. So again, the more that we engage with media that broadens our understanding of humanity, the more we will be better at connecting with our characters and telling more interesting stories, because inherently we can't all tell stories about ourselves, right? That's impossible. Even Acid Test, which is about my own history, as soon as I cast another person in it with a different experience and age and thoughts and background, I had to kind of bridge that gap. I had to translate it. We had to work together. So it wasn't even telling my story. I had to create a character that was based on those experiences. So all of that is why I think it's just really important to diversify what you're watching and to demand a diversity in what you're seeing. It's not a dirty word. And it really is important, because that is how we shape culture and how we understand each other as human beings and find empathy that is so needed in this world.